Good evening, everyone. Today we will discuss about information system, organization, and strategy. Last week we have discussed about e-business and globalization, and right now we are touching the information system and organization. And actually, in this course, there is an important, important metrics that we will use later as an assignment, which called Porter Competitive Force Model. Maybe some of you have already familiar with it. So in this course, we will discuss and I will explain about Porter Competitive Force Model, and then after that we will do the assignment based on this one and design the strategy or explain the strategy existing. So what's the learning objective? The first one is, which feature of organization do managers need to know about to build and use information system successfully? So how we implement information system successfully in an organization. The second one is, what is the impact of information system on organization? And the third one is, how do Porter's competitive force model, this is competitive five competitive force model. The value chain model, synergy, core competencies, network economics help companies develop competitive strategies using information system. And last one is, what are the challenges posed by strategic information system and how should they be addressed? So we will start. This is a short example about case study. So Grupo Modelo is a brewing company competing on process, and the problem is transforming its administration to reflect its transition to a global firm. So it's more about the administration, and the solution is to transform Grupo Modelo into a process-oriented firm, and to ensure that only authorized employees define business processes and that there is proper segregation of duties. So in this case, they apply the problem is about the administration and overlapping tasks, etc. So they define a new procedural standard operation, and in another way they apply what we call normally the principle of least privilege. So the principle is of least privilege is like giving some tasks only for the authorized employee. By default, we deny all access, and then we one by one we add the policy that, oh, this position can access this one. Oh, this position can access, can read and write, while other position only maybe take a global view only, or read only, or even can read, write and delete. So they apply principle of least privilege, and by applying this one, the solution, it demonstrates IT central role in unification of a far-flung company in better decision making. So actually, what they did in Grupo Modelo is they transform, or they transform from physical manual organizational procedure to the digital organization by applying several policy, etc. Well, actually, when we discuss about policy, etc., we can apply it also in case of cloud computing. But if there is time, we will discuss later how we apply, etc. So we start with the feature of organization. Well, the scope. Information technology and organization influence each other. And relationship influenced by organizations consists of structure, the business process, politics, culture, environment, management decision. So when we talk about information system, normally we have to define the actor or stakeholder or user access, and the role of the user. Maybe this one is for a customer, maybe this one is for evaluator, This one is for manager. This one is for maybe for director, etc. So that's what we call structure, transforming the structure hierarchical from the physical organizational real world organizational structure to the digital structure. And the second one we have discussed last week about the business processes, starting uh, from the top to down or in first, etc. It depends on the supplier, from supplier production until distribution to end market. And the third one, well, in this case, politics is not discussed further in this course. But if you want to discuss, well, it's like endless. And the culture, it's like company culture. So even though you have or you know that there are two companies, similar companies, competitor each other, but each companies normally each company has its own culture and environment management decision, how they manage, how to they do the decision, etc., the hierarchical and etc. So this is the relationship influenced by organization if we want to build an information technology. In software engineering, actually, well, because I'm software developer, normally in this step we call it like requirement engineering in the first step, and we have a lot of questions, etc., to the client to define these points. And this is the two-way relationship between organization and information technology. So actually, in the first one, when we initialize information technology, actually organization, well, it depends. If you want to build something, information system, for example, normally we have to understand what's the organization's environment, culture, etc. But after the information technology is applied, then sometimes or often normally organization have to transform or it has to, well, adapt to the new technology. So that's why it's two-way relationship. And we start with the first point, which is structure. What is an organization? Well, this is a technical definition. I'm sure that you are already familiar with it. So the technical definition is a formal social structure that processes resources from environment to produce output. The second definition, formal legal entity with internal rules and procedures as well as social structure. So the definition of organization, it has to, there is a structure with internal, well, there is rules, procedures, and there is an input and output and goal. And if we see in the behavioral definition, a collection of right, privilege, obligation, and responsibilities that is delicately balanced over a period of time through conflict and conflict resolution. So this is the definition of organization. This is and this is the technical microeconomic definition of the organization. If we want to illustrate, so organization consists of, there is an input from the environment and production process, and the output of the environment. Then later we have feedback for the next input. As we can see over here, for example, if we want to build information system, or if we want to apply information technology, for example, you want to apply cloud computing in your company, or you want to apply mobile application for your, maybe for your daily task management activities, then you have to understand the environment, several points above. So we get inputs from the environment, then we build the system, and then the system works, production process, and after that there is an output of to the environment. So maybe like, oh, we actually, based on our new system, we can improve, for example, well, this is a case that I know because it's related to my domain. So sometimes when a company want to transform to their technology or their system from, from dedicated server to to the cloud computing, maybe they consider what's the benefit, etc. So after they apply, normally the purpose of transforming to the cloud computing is for the reliability and scalability, etc. So after they transform, normally they should, what is the output? Normally the capital expense of the cloud computing, normally you have to buy a server, etc. It becomes a variable expense. So variable expense like operational expense, like in 1 month you have to subscribe or you have to pay only several amount of money. Then what's the benefit you get? Maybe it can scale up down efficiently, run if there is a new system, you can apply it directly within a minute, you can directly launch it, etc. So that's the example of output of the environment if you want to apply cloud computing, for example. Well, it's not as easy as that, but in global, something like that. After that, you know that, oh, okay, we get a benefit of cloud computing, we get a good scalability, etc. Then what next? How we, then after that, we know that there is a chart, etc. How we improve our sales or our marketing. Then after that, we can do the feedback over here to define a new input from the new improvement, and go on. It's like spiral improvement, etc. So that is the example. And this is a behavioral view of organization. The example, the representation of the definition. There is an environmental resources. Then and there is a formal organization. There is divided into 2 points: structure and process. The structure, there is hierarchy, division of labor, roles, standard operational procedure in bahasa, business culture, business process and culture. And well, for the process, there is a right and obligation, accessing or privilege, responsibilities, values, norms, people, etc. And after that, there is an output, environmental output. Well, this is the illustration of the definition of organization in terms of behavioral view. So still in the structure, when we talk about organization, there are characteristic or features of organization. The first one is use of hierarchical structure. Well, the first point is applied for all, even in the world of animal, like lion. As we can see, there's only one king or one coordinator. Or in wolf, as you can see, there is alpha male, and then there is a follower, etc. Hierarchical structure. But what differences between us and them? Us and well, kingdom of animal or group of people without with which we couldn't define it as organization. Second one is accountability, authority in system of impartial decision making, the objective decision making. The third one is adherence to principle of efficiency. So normally, if we want to build an organization, we want to make it as efficient as possible. Next, routines and business process. So there is a routines, activities, daily activities, and business process. And there is organizational politics, culture, environment, and structure. And the next one is the business process. So I think it's the second point. After structure, the business process. Routine and business process. There is a routine, standard operating procedures. There is a precise rules, procedures. Well, in this case, you are familiar with your daily, because it's your domain, daily activities. Our domains, if because we are already in the professional level. Procedure practice developed scope with virtually all expected situation. So we have already familiar with our position, etc. And the business process, it consists of collection of routines. Well, if we take a point over here, It's like it's bottom up. As we can see, business process is collection of routines. But sometimes, or in the beginning, sometimes we have to define from top down. If you want to define a new business process, well, if you want to define new business, you have to define what's the global business process first. Then after that, you can split to the smaller, maybe smaller activities, etc., until it becomes routines. So that's the top down. Well, it's up. Well, it depends in the context, but sometime in the beginning you have to define top down, but to define it daily activities or to define the existing approach, you define it bottom up. And for business form, it consists of collection of business processes. If you remember, last week we discussed about, for example, we have a business form and consists, let's say we take an example of our national company like Telkom. It consists of a lot of business processes, maybe 1,000 business processes inside Telkom, and etc. For example, Pertamina, etc. It has a similar characteristic. And this is the illustration. There's individual companies, individual routines, and then business process 1, 2. Even if we talk about cross-functional, last week we discussed about cross-functional area. So this business process may be affected to the other business process and vice versa. And at the end, it defines what we call about business form. The next point is politics. Well, our organizational politics consists of divergent viewpoints, lead to political struggle, competition, and conflict. It's nature of human. And the political resistance greatly hampers organizational change. So what's the, even, well, I don't know for you, well, everyone in this class have different background of company, but in my case, for example, in academic, for example, in university, we have laboratory. We have several laboratories. Well, we have organizational politics over here from the laboratories, and when I did my master and dissertation, did my doctoral study in France. Actually, the organizational politics exists, and it's I think it's more intense. And as far as I know, French people like discussing small things into, how to say, it's basic and fundamental, and that's what makes sometimes, if we can what's make different, if we can drive this environment condition to a good to a positive environment. So normally they challenge for each laboratory to how to say, to produce some innovation and fundamental innovation. Therefore, sometimes there is new fundamental in the Western countries. But in another way, if we take an example, well, this is in the same laboratories, even in France also. In the negative aspect, they have a struggling competition from each person to others, etc. So it exists. This problem exists everywhere. And what we can do to solve this problem for negative environment, negative activities about organizational politics is the standard operating procedure. This is what we what's the differences if we want to build or we want to drive our organizational structure. And in terms of software engineering or software development, do we care about organizational politics? Yes, we have to think about this. But sometimes we have to, well, of course, we have to take an objective viewpoint. And sometimes we have to, how to say, to take a best practice and to make a best we sometimes if we want to build an information system for a company, for example, there is an organizational politics which one stakeholder prefer to do this one and another stakeholder to do another one. That's why we need a software consultant. Then we can do giving advice for this stakeholder and other stakeholder to build, how to say, to build a middle point between two of them. So that's the position of uh, organizational politics viewpoints in terms of developing software. Next one is the culture. So organizational culture encompasses a set of assumptions that define goal and products. So it's more about the assumption and to define the goal and products and what products the organization should produce, etc. How and where it should be produced, for whom the products should be produced, what's the target, etc. It defines the culture of the organizational activities and maybe powerful unifying force as well as restraint on change. Well, for the culture, it's more about how we drive our activities in our in the culture, organizational culture to achieve the goal and product as well as to target the market, etc. And next, there is environment. In this case, environment, it's more about reciprocal relationship. So we will discuss. There is a illustration later. Organizations are open to dependent on the social and physical environment. Actually, the definition of environment in here is like external environment or internal environment. External environment like supplier, distributor, maybe for endpoint and market. And internal environment, it's like this hierarchical structure of your organization. As well, this one organization can influence their environment change faster. And well, this one is what we call digital disruption, like 10 or 20 years. Within 10 and 20 years, as we can see, there are a lot of the environment change faster than organization. When the simple example is when Apple introduced iPhone, then previously we are not familiar with the how to say the full screen phone, but after that all companies or a lot of companies it's not game changer, but it's an industry changer, adopt and similar. So that's why Nokia, etc., with overconfident with their approach or their technologies, and we know what's the current condition between these two companies. An information system can be instrument of environmental scanning as a lens. So as we can see, when we build information system, there is like dashboard monitoring, and this monitoring we can monitor or we can see what's the environment behavior. Maybe if there is a viral something, it can be affected to our product or etc. So it's important to consider the environment scanning. And this is the lens. As you can see, it's like eye, and this is the form. Information system can use as a lens, or we can by applying or by building dashboard monitoring, etc., or doing data science or data analysis for our organization and our environment. We can understand the environmental resources and constraints, which consists of governments, competitor, customer, financial institution, and culture, as well as knowledge and technology. Previously, I remember in 15 years, in 2005, for example, if you want to build a web application, if you want to build an information system for a company, normally a lot of them consider to build a desktop application. But nowadays, we have to build a web application so that our system can be accessed everywhere and anytime, every time. What's next? Maybe we consider mobile, but sometimes mobile there is a limitation of accessibility. Environments shape what organization can do, but organizations can influence their environment and decide to change environment altogether. Information technology plays a critical role in helping organizations perceive environmental change and in helping organizations act on their environment. So it's like giving a view or on the windows for seeing the environment. Okay, then what's next? This one, I think. So, okay, when I mentioned about disruption, so we talk about disruptive technologies because this is the domain of management information system. In this case, we start with this one. Technology that brings about sweeping change to business, industries, and markets. For example, about the personal computers, word processing software, the internet, speed sharing algorithm, which is applied. This is the Google search. It's affecting our our daily activities as well as our professional activities. And first movers and fast follower. This is the key. So if your company want to adapt or your company doesn't want to be disrupted by other companies, normally don't. Well, you have to be the first movers, the inventors of disruptive technologies. If you couldn't do that, because it's very difficult, so it's very difficult. Not a lot of company, even big company, sometimes not. Sometimes the first mover is not it doesn't come from big companies. For example, Instagram, it doesn't come from Facebook, but Facebook seeing the good potential and then acquired the company. The second one is fast followers, firms with the size and resources to capitalize on that technology. As we can see right now, almost all companies, even in the government body, we have to provide like customer service, active on social media, social network, etc. As you can see, if we couldn't apply this approach, well, we will be disrupted. So the game right now is changing or changed by others. And we return to the organizational structure. There are 5 basic kinds of organizational structure. There is entrepreneurial, like small startup business, and machine bureaucracy, like mid-sized manufacturing firm normally, or divisionalized bureaucracy. So why we mention this one? Because if we mention like fast mover and fast follower, normally we have to mention the scope. And what's the scope? Like we start with this one: entrepreneur company, startup company. After that, there is a machine bureaucracy, like mid-sized manufacturing firms. It's like it has daily or it has fixed activities and it doesn't change like in 20 years or 30 years and doesn't affect it. Well, it does affected by technology, but not about the disruption, etc. It's about the new efficient thing in the manufacturing. Or this one, divisionalized bureaucracy for Fortune 500 firms, for example. They have to define or divide it, or well, they have to divide their expertise or their field to become the leader for each for their own field. And there is another thing like professional bureaucracy, law firm, school system, hospital. This is not in the company, but there's a professional still in professional aspect. School system, like right now, we are not doing business in academic, but well, there is a business process For example, this one online course, etc. And the last one is advocacy. It's more about the consulting firms, and it's growing big also. And then what's the other organizational features we have? We have to for each organization has to define the goals. It has to be cursive, utilitarian, normative, and so on. Well, it depends on the standard or what you want to define for about the goals. Next, define the constituents, leadership styles, tasks, surrounding environments. About the leadership styles between Eastern and Western, it's quite different. For Eastern, maybe in the context of academic, organizational academic. In the Eastern, we have to define like, if you want to define the task, you have to define very detailed, and you have to, well, you have a culture affected over there. So the top down is it's a little bit stronger than in the Eastern than in the Western. While in the Western, it's more like flattening, or it's more like democratizing the idea. Well, it depends. Not all companies also, but sometimes, as far as I know, like democratizing the ideas, etc., changing the collaborative environment, etc. Okay. After we define the features of organization, then we have the second point is what's the impact of information system on organization. So we have to we have already discussed about well, I've explained about organization, and right now what's the impact of applying information system for organization. Before I continue this point, maybe if is there any question or is there any topic to discuss about your organization? Maybe you have experience, maybe you can share with each other. Or maybe you can write it. We can discuss it later. Okay. So, okay, if there is no opinion, then, or if there is no question, then let us move on to the next point. What's the impact? The first impact is, well, if you talk about organization, especially in the business, economic aspect is normally is the profit. Profit economic is the main reason. So the first aspect is economic impacts. In this case, IT change relative cost of capital and the cost of information. So it changes the relative cost of capital. Like information system can be asset or can be like process, oh, how to say, like can be an asset or can be your daily expense, etc. The second point is information system technology is a factor of production like capital and labor. So it's like digital production and or digitalization of the activities of your company. So it's important as well as capital and labor. And IT affects the cost and quality of information and change economics of information. So this information technology, for example, this one, help firms contract in size because can reduce transaction costs, the cost of participating in market. For example, when we talk about quality of information, if you build a new information system like ERP, as we can see, we have a well, in terms of quantity and quality of the information, it's going better if you apply. Previously, you don't have ERP in your company. After that, you apply, then you will get a good information management inside a database. And what's the definition of quality of information? The information is well structured, and then it's completeness, aspect of completeness, and then we can the core information of and the core purpose of information is there is a value inside the information, so we can generate the values of the information. That's the quality. And change economics of information. So maybe in this one, sometimes it changes the how to say. For example, I want to give the example. At the beginning, what's when we talk about telecom, it's like a telecommunication company. But later we have like Telecom Sigma, which provide cloud computing, and there is another business process which consists of software development and etc. So it affects change economic of information from providing the link or providing the channel of the road of information, and it becomes the player in this economics. So it changed. And as well as this one, the example, the application of the information technology can help firms contract in size. It means, for example, for Microsoft, normally for Microsoft previously all employees were in US when Microsoft still in US. But after that, as we can see, a lot of potential and cheaper option, like doing the outsourcing in India for customer service, or for non-confidential or non important things, we can do outsource, and it's more cheap. It's cheaper than we apply employee or customer service in US. It's far more efficient. Okay. Well, there is a good example question from Mr. Muhammad Iqbal. We'll discuss later. Let me finish this one. And the second point is transaction cost theory. From seek to economize on transaction costs. So the first one, we can reduce. Well, normally whether for the economics, whether we want to, we have to reduce the cost, or we have to improve and increase the profit. While in transaction cost theory, the firms seek to economize on transaction cost, spacing in market, for vertical integration, hiring more employees, weighing supplier and distributor, make it as cheaper as possible. And IT lowers market transaction cost for firm, making it worthwhile for firms to transact with other firms rather than grow the number of employees. So instead of opening a new position or opening new division in the companies, sometimes it's better or it's cheaper to hire a third party, and IT can act as the medium for that. So, for example, for ERP or supply chains system, as you can see, supply chain system, there is a supplier. IT, it builds the system of supply chains management. Then there is a supplier which can interact with our system. Well, that's better instead of doing how to say manage the supplier manually, improve etc. So with IT, it can lower some market transaction costs. And this is the transaction cost theory, the illustration of the impact of information technology on the organization. Well, traditionally growing something like this, firms traditionally grow in size to reduce market transactional costs. The bigger the firms, normally the higher transaction cost. IT potentially reduce the firm market transaction costs. This means firms can outsource work using the market, reduce their employees, headcount, and still grow revenues. I think is there any no. So normally with the help of information system, Well, sometimes it's something like this. Well, it's like traditional, or even when you apply information system. Sorry. Well, this is comparing something like this, but after that there is like how to say climax uh, turn back point or something like this. In this case, this firm normally instead of growing the number of employees, whether it can be how to say it can be reduced by the information system, or they can outsource through information, well, with the help of information system or information technology. Well, traditional is something like growing something like this, and with the help of information system, there is turn back points or this one. But the most important is how we reach this turn back point. Because sometimes it's not even though over here, well, this is the form size. Just take an example. This one is a company, or this is only one firm, and this is what within the time it's growing bigger. Sometimes when we apply information technology, there is the transaction cost increase. So this is time. Let's say this is time increase. But after that, if the company successfully installed the information technology, it becomes something like this. So as we can see, there is additional cost. That's why sometimes what we call the transfer knowledge or transferring system, and this is the critical point. If the company succeeds in this point, so or can be the business process can be optimized by the new information technology. So it becomes the transaction cost. It becomes something like this. But if not, actually it's growing a new something like this. So there is an additional. But if we don't apply information technology, we will get disrupted. So the company sometimes it will be stopped like this if they don't apply or something like this, because there is no information technology applied. So okay, we are in this domain discussing how to apply etc. in this domain to provide this goal. The second one is agency theory. From its nexus of contracts among self-interested parties requiring supervision. And firms normally experience agency cost of managing and supervising, which rise as firm grows, which is normal. And IT can reduce agency costs, making it possible to firm to grow without adding the cost of supervising. So it's manually supervising manually or controlling automatically, sorry, without adding employees. Normally, we know for each company, normally they have has KPI, and nowadays all KPIs normally are how to say are managed digitally by the system. So we don't need a new guy, a new employees for managing, or a new supervisor for managing or for measuring these employees. What we can do for the manager or for the middle or for the higher is just seeing the KPI for each employee, and after that we can see what's the impact, etc. So it's automatically by the system. And this is the agency theory of the effect information technology. So, well, it's normal if the firm's large agency cost, it's going something like this. As firm grows in size and complexity, traditionally they experience rising agency costs. Traditionally, something like this. Maybe it's well, sorry, it's not complete. With the the larger firm size, the agency cost is going higher. But after they apply normally information technologies, it's not directly going down something like this. Maybe there is a time to be flat something like this, but after that it becomes something. So this is the important. This is relevant to our previous discussion. What's the other impacts? The next one is organizational and behavioral impacts. So IT flatten organization and decision making is pushed to the lower level. There is an illustration later. Fewer managers are needed because IT enables faster decision making and increased span of control. And post-industrial organization, because post-industrial organization flatten because in post-industrial societies, authority increasingly relies on knowledge and competence rather than formal position. So if you can see, normally traditional hierarchical becomes something like this previously with many levels. If there is new agreement, business process, for example, there is this one, for example, this one is the employee, or for example, if this one is the auditor, and there is this one sub-coordinator, this one coordinator, and this one is in bahasa normally it's like head of the department or division, and at this one you have to ask the permission of the director, etc. But after if we apply information technology, it can be something like this. Well, it's possible to build something like this, or sometimes they still how to say this traditional hierarchical is represented in the information technology, so it still applies. But it's possible also to build something like this. There is a lower employee, then the lowest employee, then there is a middle management. In between this one and this one, it's managed by handled by the IT, so it can handle a lot of, maybe for this one can handle this one, and this one it handle this one, and this one handle this one. So with the help of technology, we don't need more manager or supervisor to organize. Well, in this case, and the business doesn't change. But we can, as we can see, we can reach a more employee over here to manage with the one supervisor. That's why I think it in the context of information technology, it gives the answer from the question of Mr. Muhammad Iqbal. So let us go. Well, let's go to the question. Why does all companies? Let me stop share. Why does all companies always change their organization? They said that it's all about breakthrough and produce efficiency to survive in the middle of crisis. But the fact is, we need to spend a lot of money to make it change. So okay, that's a good topic to discuss about organization. Maybe if you have any response, you can write in the chat, or you can open your mic. From Mrs. Febrita, sometimes change organization that not follow change management process will impact to that company. Okay. Yeah, this is what the two relationship between sometimes in the context of information technology, two relationship between between organization and information technology. Like organization firstly define the information technology, and then after that, after we find out there is an efficiency that we can apply in information technology, then it changes the management process. Well, within the change of management process, it changes the organization because it can make us this one some rush, high cost, etc. Have to adopt information change technology development. That's why there change structure. Okay. Political and organization, yes, was not bring the solution, but only accommodate. Yeah, related about agency, for example, earning management. This is the second question. So I think I would like to answer based on my own opinion. Well, after that, maybe if you have any opinion from Mr. Muhammad Iqbal. Yes, sometimes it depends on the leader. It's not always about the, well, in real case, what I found out is sometimes it's not about sometimes it's not necessary to change the organization, but the leader. And as we can see, it's likely happened to our country. When we change the president, it changes the organizational structure, etc. And they talk about breakthrough, etc. But sometimes it doesn't. It's not necessary. Yes, it's the fact. But in the context of business or company, normally changing of organization is necessary to refresh your how to say. Sometimes if you have daily routine activities, it becomes bored, or it becomes less productive. Then you need a new breakthrough or a new innovation. Like actually work from home, it's one way of innovation. But later, after 1 year or 2 years, previously we like, oh, we can work from home. We doesn't face the traffic, etc. But right now, I think a lot of people prefer to work in the office because work from home means work full hours. So that's the reason. More flexible, it means that we have to work anytime. So I think that's my opinion. Then I would like to discuss next, Mr. Richard. Yes, was not bring the solution. No, only accommodate. Well, actually, the purpose of information system is only the tool. The solution is how we handle the tool. Do we handle it correctly or not? It depends on us. Or it's not about how, but how much or how long. So how long we can survive or we can adapt with these new tools. So it depends. Define what our organization. So, and based on agency theory, earning management aim to use technique to earning management by using minimum ROA, which is required from owner. But in the data analytics, assume that we can maximize the profit, but can because of the agency issues. Mr. Richard, can you explain again? Maybe you can open your mic.
Hello.
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Agus.
Yeah.
Permission to ask about the previous question. I mean, for some company, there are a lot of technique about earning management in financial literacy of the firm.
Okay.
So, for example, that the user or the owner asked to have a minimum ROA, for example, 20% of the ROA. Yeah, ROA is like earning after tax. Let's say that 20%, and the management is compliant by the regulation of the ROA standard. So, but actually in the data analytics or in the real IT system, for example,
yeah,
actually in that year we can make let's say 30% in the real case. So,
okay.
but because of the compliance of the minimum ROA is applied to earning management for the company. So my question is how ES can help this problem to still maximize the profit of the firm, but also minimize the agency issue. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think sorry. Maybe some of you have any opinion because it's related to management, etc. It's not fully my domain. Sorry, disclaimer from the beginning. Is there any opinion? That's a good thing. That's good issue to handle, to discuss. Mr. Richard, in case in terms of data analytics, it means that actually, for example, in in the information system, it's possible to maximize the profit, but because of this ROA or earning management issue, agency management issue, so we couldn't do the profit, right? Isn't like that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, is there any opinion want to help me? Maybe. Sorry, I couldn't answer the correct answer your question right now because it's not my domain. But if you want, I can contact my friend in the domain of maybe in management, etc.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I think I will save this question. Okay. Next, I would like to ask disruptive technology. Is camera application a good disruptive technology because many people like to use cell phone camera to capture image than camera? Yes, actually, when we talk about camera, we know like the history of Kodak, etc. And our previous camera. So it's like, yes, it's like disruptive, but actually it's not widely applied for the camera industry. Camera, you mean like the DSLR, something like that, like the professional camera, Mrs. Juliana. What's the definition of camera over here? Mrs. Juliana? Not. Okay. So let's say take an example of DSLR camera or professional camera. Normally, yeah, for amateur purpose, it becomes it becomes, well, the cell phone camera becomes it disrupts the market of professional camera. But I think the real problem is not that because there is a domain, there is a niche market for this camera, DSLR and professional camera, for example. So what we can do, as for example, if you work in the camera company, camera manufacturing, we can focus on specific niche market over here for the professional purpose or newbie for amateur who want to take a professional camera, because the best type of cell phone camera, there is a limitation, etc. We couldn't like the features and the digital aspect and the hardware itself, it's different. We couldn't change the distance between the lens, etc. So okay, so it's not really a disruptive technology. Well, but yes, it attacks for the amateur purpose. Okay, investment. Do you agree if investment in information system today seems expensive? I think it becomes cheaper and cheaper. Information system. I remember one of my mentor talk about development of HTML web application in 1998, and it cost like 30,000 US dollar. But right now with 1,000 you can, I think 1,000 you can get a lot good things. I think maybe the problem in information system investment is like we have to define the scope. If the scope and the risk is not too big, it becomes cheaper. Actually, it becomes cheaper. For example, previously for amateur purpose, if you want to build a company profile, 10 years before, you have to hire like 10 years or 15 years before, you have to hire a programmer, etc., to put the company profile. Or you can do with content management system like WordPress, blog, but it seems not professional. But right now you can do it in plug and click, drag and drop, and for this one is for startup scale. It's also for the company profile and becomes cheaper. But in another way, in the information system information system, for example, ERP or specific business process, yes, it depends on the risk. If it and in the scope, we can discuss it further, because I often get well, I got several clients to, and I have a company, software company, so I know a little bit how we define the price, etc. Maybe maybe later, if you want to discuss further, you can contact me. Is there any matters for what? Sorry, Mr. Abbas, your question is not complete. The important thing is the business process of the company itself, how to make continuous improvement, cut long processing to shortcut and so on, and then assisted. Yeah, yes, IS does help, but the main issue is the business process. Then with assisted with by information system, we can see that, oh, this one is necessary, or we can cut this step to another step, and it's already applied a lot of case studies in the company. That's why maybe we'll discuss later. Do you agree with outsourcing system? Yeah, this is a political question actually. Evaluate our investment on information. Yes, there is, but we will not discuss it right now. For outsourcing system, it depends. For in terms of working culture, well, personally, I disagree. But in case of splitting big tasks into small tasks, I think it's a good point. Like Amazon Mechanical Turk, it applies a lot of things. For example, if I have a problem, normally it's not a difficult problem, but it has a lot of work to do. Then instead of doing by myself or doing by my employees, I can upload it to the Amazon Mechanical Turk to label it or to solve it for another people. Like for freelance work programmer also, sometimes we don't need to add new employee, because for specific purpose, like specific technologies, and later we don't use it for our daily activities. So it depends on the context of outsourcing. Okay, I think that's all from me about the question, and we will continue. Is there any other opinion? Maybe you can open mic. If there is no further question, actually one of the response of method to evaluate our investment in information system, by the end of this course, we can try to evaluate not the investment in information system, but what kind of information system we need. So it's like predefined or pre-building the information system. That's what we call, one method is called Porter competitive force model. So, okay, we continue to the impact of information system on organization. In the case of organizational resistance to change, information system becomes one up in organizational politics because they influence access to key resource information. And information system potentially change an organizational organization structure, culture, politics. So we discuss it, the management, cost rush, etc. And the most common reason for failure of large project is due to organizational and political resistance to change. So the main reason sometimes it's not the application of technology or the system, the information system itself, but the organizational management and political resistance. Sometimes there is a good system, but the people don't want to use it. People don't want, or there is another how to say another policy, etc. So implementing information system over here has consequence for task arrangement, structure, and people. So it changes people. Actually, when we apply information system, the people have to apply, have to study new things, transfer knowledge, and adapt with the new system, and then comply with new job tasks. Previously, maybe the job tasks it's more about the repetitive working type, but right now with the information system, it's like changing, not the repetitive, because the repetitive can be solved by information system. And organizational structure, it affects for the resistance to change. And then this one, the internet and organization. So this one is more about technology, especially for the internet, because it gives the impact on your organization, on our organization, maybe in several organizations, a lot of them, because the internet increase the accessibility, storage, and distribution of information and knowledge for organization. As we can see previously, when we talk about data, maybe we store it in the hard disk, but right now, if this provider asks data to the employee from the employee, maybe the employee can just send the link of the data or just send the report, online report of the data. The internet can greatly lower transaction and agency costs. This one's it's important because large firms deliver internal manuals to employees via corporate website, saving millions of dollars in distribution costs. For example, if you for transfer knowledge or for training, something for training new employee, previously we have to print a lot of dictate or a lot of books, and we have to deliver printing a lot of reports. But right now, we don't need to print it out. We just need to show it in the website, as well as for delivering the task. Previously, maybe you have to be, there is a geographical distance or geographical aspect which restrict you to deliver the task. But right now, you can maybe you can deliver task delivery becomes easier. Even it can be outsourced outside in abroad, outside countries. For example, right now, for the example of Microsoft customer service, when there is a call, the customer service answer from comes from India, not from US itself, or for manufacturing, etc. Sometimes a lot of things move to China or Vietnam or Indonesia, in certain industry, outsource the task, but we define the standard. And how still in the domain the impact of information system, but in this case, how organization plan new system or plan to build or to adopt a new system. The first one is we have to consider environment and structure, culture, and politics. Yes, it's related to previous discussion. And this is important. So why do some firms becomes leader in their industry? Because they can actually, one of the answer is because they can define their competitive force models, or previously we have like SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. But in this case, in the context of competitive force model, it's more specific, because it provides general view of firms, its competitors, environment. And there are 5 competitive forces that shapes the fate of the firm. The first one is traditional competitors, or the competitors, our competitors. And the second one is the new market entrants. The third one is substitute products or service. And the fourth one is bargaining position of customer, and the fifth one is the bargaining position of suppliers. This is the illustration. Before this one, I think there is one interesting video I want to show you. Let me check.
Porter's 5 forces. A strategy.
Can you hear the voice?
Yep.
Okay, that's good.
Here.
Okay. This one is well, for me personally, it's good metrics to follow to analyze your the problem in your company. To not the problem, but the position of your
framework
company.
that probably every business student and practitioner has heard about. But do you also know how to use it properly? Today you will be finding that out because I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Porter's 5 forces. My name is Lars and welcome to a new episode of Business to You. In 1979, Michael Porter, one of the founding fathers of business strategy, published an article called How Competitive Forces Shape Strategy. In this article, he argued that we often view competition way too narrowly, and as a solution came up with 5 basic forces that together shape the industry structure and determine the competitive intensity of an industry. In the end, these forces affect.
Sorry, I want to take a note. Maybe
affect the
if I play something like this, can you still see the subtitle, or can you follow it clearly?
Yes.
Okay, very small.
long-term profit potential in an industry and therefore its attractiveness. We will come back to that in a second. Because we're talking about competitive forces, the 5 forces model can be considered an external analysis framework, similar to PESTEL. However, as explained in my previous video on PESTEL analysis, it is important to make a distinction between the macro environment and the task environment, or meso environment. Do you remember how the macro environment contains factors that have a one-way effect on organizations? And the task environment, on the other hand, contains factors that are in a direct contact with the focal company. They interact with each other. Porter's 5 forces falls within this latter category and includes the following 5 forces: rivalry among existing competitors, threat of new entrants, the threat of substitute products or services, the bargaining power of suppliers, and the bargaining power of buyers. Before we go into each force separately, it is important to understand that the main purpose of this model is to evaluate the root causes of profitability in an industry through the competitive forces. Porter therefore draws a connection between competition on the one hand and profitability on the other hand. If competitive forces in an industry are high or intense, the profit potential of a firm in that specific industry will decrease. As you will be seeing in this video, each of the 5 forces are able to affect the profit potential in an industry both positively
Sorry, I think it's better like this.
And negatively. We will be illustrating this dynamic relationship between competition and profitability throughout this video with some examples from the airline industry. Let's start off with the middle section of the framework. This force of the 5 forces model examines how intense the current competition is in the marketplace. This is, for example, determined by the number and size of existing competitors, the industry growth rate, product differentiation between rivals, and exit barriers. Rivalry is, for example, high when there are a lot of competitors that are roughly equal in size and power. When the industry is growing slowly, which increases the fight for market share, and when competitors are not much differentiated from each other, resulting in products and services that are nearly identical. In addition, rivalry will be more intense when barriers to exit are high, forcing companies to remain in the industry even though profit margins are declining. These barriers to exit can, for example, exist due to long-term loan agreements and high fixed costs. When When rivalry is high, competitors are likely to actively engage in advertising and price wars, which can seriously hurt a business bottom line. Let's look at this more closely. If direct competitors fight for market share and decide to battle each other by dropping the prices, profit margin will decrease. Moreover, they might decide to spend more money on advertising, raising the costs and again decreasing the profit margin. When looking at the airline industry, we see that the industry is extremely competitive because of several reasons, which include the vast amount of players that are active in the industry, the fact that the industry itself is very stagnant in terms of growth at the moment, and the high fixed costs that result into high barriers to exit. In addition, many players in the industry are similar in size, leading to extra fierce competition between those firms. Taken all together, it can be said that rivalry among existing competitors in the airline industry is high. Threat of new entrants. New entrants in an industry bring new capacity and a desire to gain market share that put pressure on prices, costs and the rate of investments necessary to compete. Simply said, you will have to share the pie with more players. The seriousness of the threat depends on the barriers to entry in a certain industry. The higher these barriers, the smaller the chance that more players will enter the playing field and the smaller the threat for existing rivals. Examples of barriers to entry are the need of economies of scale, high customer loyalty for existing brands, large capital requirements, the need for cumulative experience, government policies, and limited access to distribution channels. If new competitors enter the industry, existing players might need to increase their investments in product development or marketing in order to stay ahead of the game. This will increase costs and lower the profit margin. Or, in order to prevent new competitors from entering, existing players might decide to lower prices in order to scare off new competitors. Again, this will decrease the profit margin. The threat of new entrants in the airline industry can be considered medium. It takes quite some upfront investments to start an airline company. Moreover, new entrants need access to flight routes, licenses, insurances, distribution channels, and other qualifications that are not easy to obtain when you're new to the industry. Furthermore, it can be expected that existing players have built up a large base of experience over the years to cut costs and to increase service levels. A new entrant is likely to not have this kind of expertise, therefore creating a competitive disadvantage right from the start. However, due to the liberalization of market access and the availability of leasing options and external finance from banks, investors, and aircraft manufacturers, new doors are opening for potential entrants. Over the years, many low-cost carriers like Southwest Airlines, Ryanair, and EasyJet have successfully entered the industry by introducing innovative, cost-cutting business models, thereby shaking up existing players like American Airlines, Lufthansa, Delta Airlines, and Air France-KLM. The threat of substitutes. A substitute product performs the same or a similar function as an industry product by a different means. They essentially fulfill the same underlying need, even though they may not look identical on the surface. They are therefore easy to overlook. The existence of these products alone increases the possibility that customers switch to alternatives. In order to discover these alternatives, you should look beyond similar products that are branded differently by competitors. Instead, every product that serves a similar need for customers should be taken into account. Energy drinks like Red Bull, for instance, are usually not considered competitors of coffee brands such as Nespresso or Starbucks. However, since both coffee and energy drinks fulfill a similar need, that is, staying awake or getting energy, customers might be willing to switch from one to another if they feel that the prices increase too much in either coffee or energy drink. The number of substitutes, the willingness of customers to substitute, and the relative price performance of substitute products are therefore factors that determine the total threat of substitute products. Since substitute products can lure customers away, companies need to take actions to stay more attractive and prevent their product from becoming replaced or obsolete. They can, for example, lower the prices, which will also lower the profit margin. They can spend more money on advertising, which increases the costs, or they can invest heavily in product upgrades or additional services that will give customers an incentive to stay. Again, this will increase the costs and lower the profit margin. In terms of the airline industry, it is safe to say that the general need of customers is to travel. Of course, there are many alternatives for traveling besides going by airplane. Depending on the urgency and the distance, customers could take the train or go by car. Especially in Asia, it is very common to make use of high-speed trains such as bullet trains for medium to long distance traveling. We see a similar tendency developing within Europe. Furthermore, the airline industry might get some serious future competition from the Hyperloop concept, in which passengers will be traveling in capsules through a vacuum tube reaching speed limits of 1200 kilometers an hour. Taking this all together, the threat of substitutes in the airline industry can be considered at least medium to high. Now we enter the horizontal section of the framework, the suppliers and the buyers. This section is basically illustrating a company's supply chain. Let's start off with the bargaining power of suppliers. This force analyzes how much power and control a company's supplier has over the potential to raise its prices or to reduce the quality of purchased goods or services, which in turn would lower an industry's profitability potential. The number and concentration of suppliers to choose from are important factors in determining supplier power. The fewer there are, the more power they have. Businesses are in a better position when there are a multitude of suppliers. Sources of supplier power also include the switching cost of companies in the industry, the presence of available substitutes, the strength of their distribution channels, and the uniqueness or level of differentiation in the product or service the supplier is delivering. The bargaining power of suppliers in the airline industry can be considered very high. When looking at the major inputs that airline companies need, we see that they are especially dependent on fuel and aircrafts. These inputs, however, are very much affected by the external environment over which the airline companies themselves have little control. The price for aviation fuel is, for example, subject to the fluctuations in the global market for oil, which can change wildly because of the geopolitical and other factors. In terms of aircrafts, only two major suppliers exist, Boeing and Airbus. Boeing and Airbus therefore have a substantial bargaining power on the prices they charge. The bargaining power of buyers. This force analyzes to what extent customers are able to put the company under pressure by demanding better quality, thereby driving up costs or exert control over price. Keep in mind that buyers do not always have to be the end consumer. In case your business is a manufacturing company, buyers can be other companies like retailers, for example. Customers have a lot of power when there aren't many of them and when the customers have many alternatives to buy from. Moreover, it should be easy for them to switch from one company to another. Buying power is low, however, when customers purchase products in small amounts, act independently, and when the seller's product is very different from any of its competitors. The internet has allowed customers to become more informed and therefore more empowered. Customers can easily compare prices online, get information about a wide variety of products, and get access to offers from other companies instantly. Companies can take measures to reduce buyer power by, for example, implementing loyalty programs or by differentiating their products and services. Bargaining power of buyers in the airline industry is high. Customers are able to check prices of different airline companies fast through the many online price comparison websites such as Skyscanner and Expedia. In addition, there aren't any switching costs involved in that process. Customers nowadays are willing to fly with different carriers to and from their destination as long as it lowers their ticket price. Brand loyalty therefore doesn't seem to be that high. Some airline companies are trying to change this with frequent flyer programs aimed at rewarding customers that come back to them from time to time. Now we have looked at every force individually, you will notice that we start to get a better picture of how competition in an industry looks like and which of the forces have the biggest impact on your profit margin. However, Porter's 5 forces is not just a tool to evaluate an industry and determine whether an industry is attractive or not. Do you remember how the 5 forces are part of the task environment, causing them to be in a direct contact with a focal company? This means that a company is able to affect these forces similarly to how these forces are able to affect your company. In other words, you can do something about it, you can fight them, you can shape them. Understanding the forces that shape industry competition is the starting point for developing strategy. The model is therefore a great tool to come up with strategic actions on what to do in the future. Imagine that you start to notice that your dependency on one particular supplier is increasing. What you could do is try to standardize the components needed to create your product so that you could choose from multiple suppliers and switch more easily among them. Or if you fear that your competitors will start to enter price wars, you could invest more money in product development in order to significantly differentiate your products from those of your rivals. Make sure that you offer features and benefits that your competitors cannot offer, and you will have less chance that you will be forced to cut prices as well. Or if you feel that new competitors might enter the playing field, you could raise the barriers to entry by investing more into marketing. This will enhance your brand awareness and scare off entrants because of the high costs needed to overcome that brand awareness. Even though these actions involve costs in the short term, it will help you to protect your company's profitability in the long term. Because that, in the end, is the purpose of strategy. If you like business-related stuff and want to learn more business frameworks,
So actually, that's a good point at the end. Some strategy, one of the strategy is we put some cost for the short term, but at the end we will gain good return or good output for the long term, and that's what we call strategy. As we can see over here, it's very useful. This method is very useful. Then you can apply in the case of evaluate our investment information system based on the question of Mr. Abbas. Actually, before you start the information system investment, you can try to map this challenge or this competitive model. After that, you will understand, or at least it will minimize the impact of the loss or the short-term cost for your information system. Is it still because the video was made before the pandemic? The example, the example of airplane, it's not maybe there is a chance, but in the global, yes, it's still related. Mr. Asep. Let me reshare a new one. So after we find out what's our competitors and competitive models, then we know what's the problem ahead in front of for our company. Then what next? That's the more important. Actually, okay, I think this one will. This is it's already discussed. One. So what's the strategies? The strategies it's not limited. It's based on the book, but some of the strategy described in the book. There are 4 strategies dealing with competitive forces enabled by using IT. The first one is low-cost leadership by flattening the structure. Previously, we have discussed. So we get smaller number of leader. The second one is product differentiation and focus on market niche. For example, camera, case of camera, maybe, and or the third one is this one, strength customer and supplier intimacy. And all of them can be applied, three of them can be optimized through maybe data analytics or maybe based on appropriate information system. For example, customer service through social network, etc. So for the low cost leadership, produce products, this one efficient customer response system, etc. So it answered the question of the chatbot. Simple case of chatbot can be lead in yes, it can be led to reduce the employee, change it to chatbot. But as we can see, we have new employee or a specific task to manage social media. So it's changing from repetitive question to the new interactive customer and company intimacy. So it's a game changer. Actually, we lost this one low cost position for the leader, but at the other side we can take this as a new strategy to build more intimacy between customer and the company. Our product differentiation depends on your business. If maybe if you couldn't do new differentiation, you have to do mass customization or mass production. Maybe it's getting cheaper. Or this one, product. Actually, when we talk about, for example, Tesla, we talk about automotive manufacturer. But then when Tesla collect the information, etc., so you can see it refers to the software, refers to software company which provide a lot of information data, traffic, etc. So that's why, for example, Google from only search engine, it becomes ads engine, and after that it becomes Google Map, etc., providing, etc. So it's changing based on the business, the products changes, or focus on the market niche. Well, for the market niche, it depends again for based on your company. Or standard customer and supplier intimacy. So switching costs, for example, in case of pandemic, as we can see, normally, previously, cinema is widely, well, movies, if we want to watch new quality or new and high quality of movies, we have to go to cinema, etc. But right now, we can open our TV and see through Netflix or Amazon or Disney Star, Hotstar Plus. So it's possible. It's changing. And another strategy that we have to consider is the internet impact. There are several internet impacts. Some of them are like this one. Well, it becomes opportunity and threat at the same time, double-edged sword. Still at work, but rivalry more intense. So it's more intense on the rivalry and customer acquisition. Or based on the value chain models, maybe you can, or to say this one, I think there is, yes, this one is better. With the help of information technology, you can automate, do the automatization with several to support activities. This is several example or primary activities in logistics, operation, sales, marketing, maybe for TPS, transaction processing system, and etc. The value chain models will assisted by information system. Or well, value web, it's more customer driven. Actually, the most important for data acquisition, customer acquisition is for this one, customer driven. We'll talk about privacy later, or it will be discussed with Mr. Prof. Joko Lianto. And it makes a less linear operation than traditional value chains. This is some examples for the value of web. There is ERP system connected with each other, and what kind of connection. There is an example of here. Then the last one is synergy. Information system can improve overall performance of business unit by promoting synergies and core competencies. So instead of doing competitive, we can do collaboration. Some of the collaboration, merger of bank in Indonesia, as we can see, there is a Bank Syariah Indonesia, BSI, merged from several banks. Or purchase, this one, example, purchase of YouTube by Google. Actually, it's not synergy, it's acquisition. And well, this is several example and importance of core competency in the domain, in world-class leader, which is relies on knowledge, experience, and sharing this across business unit. And the most important right now, sometimes it's not how we handle all business monopoly to the monopoly of the business, but how we collaborate with others. Well, that's one strategy, network-based strategies. And others, this is a traditional economics approach, or this one is network economics. I think that's all. For other, there is a, okay. Well, yes, I think that's all for from me. And before I continue, if there is any question, I would like to give you an assignment. So if you see classroom, section 4, you will see assignment competitive force model. I would like to give you, this one is an individual assignment. Try to take an example of a case study in your company. Well, it can be in your company or in a company. Maybe you know the company, or it's up to you. In a company, then analyze the company with Porter's competitive force models. As we can see, based on the video, I will share the video in the classroom later. In the video, as we can see, there is a competitor, numbers of competitor, etc. And it depends of our strategy, which one we want to solve. The second one is how IS. Let me share the. And then after you find out the problem, for example, oh, okay, I will focus on this one and competitors, or I will focus on substitute product and service. Then after that, how IS can help the company whether to tackle this to have to. Let me edit. I think. How IS can help the company to tackle this competitive force model. Actually, in this case, you can provide your own, for example, your own proposition, your own idea, or actually in the information system that has been applied. So previously we have the problem of this one, but right now after information system applied, and then we can solve this one, and we can get price trade-off, or some transaction cost profit improve, etc. And last one is the reference, which company, etc. And for this one, summarize your work in a presentation PDF format. And because we have a lot of students right now, there are 41 students right now, so we don't have time to do the presentation for all of them, and provide record your presentation in 5 or to 10 minutes video, and upload it in YouTube unlisted, or you can put it in the drive, maybe for the security reason, etc. It's up to you, but normally if you put it in YouTube unlisted right now, it's fine. That's up to you. At least try to record your presentation. Maybe you can use Zoom meeting, Zoom by yourself, and then you do the presentation for 5 and 10 minutes, and upload the records on gitu. Upload the records on the cloud service. Is it clear, the question? Yes, we can get. You can get the slide materials as well as the link of the video later. The presentation, it has to be in English. Yeah, that's the interesting part actually. Okay, if there is no question, I think that's all. The deadline is next week. After next week, actually, I will give you another task. So this next week we will have a new task about the data analysis or how we improve data later. Okay. Okay. Let me stop sharing. Yeah. Okay. I think that's all for today. Thank you very much for your attendance. Don't forget to do the present and fill berita acara. Stay safe, keep healthy. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat malam, Bapak Ibu sekalian.
Waalaikumsalam.